As a kid growing up in the 80s, James Bond films was the sort of thing that would get every bank holiday on the TV. And throughout the 80s, the Bond films, they certainly had a very distinct style. Now, my first encounter with Bond at the cinema was in 1989, and that was with License to Kill. Now, I certainly remember going to the cinema one Saturday evening with a couple of friends, and we wanted to see the new Indiana Jones film, but that was totally sold out, and on the other screen was License to Kill. At that point, I wasn't even aware that that was the new James Bond film. It was just a film that was in the cinema. So we got tickets, we went to see it, and it was a film that redefined Bond, not only for me, but for pretty much everything that was to come after it. I remember sitting in the cinema watching License to Kill, thinking, this is totally different to any James Bond film that I've seen before. Timothy Dalton brought a hardness to the role, he brought a brutality to the role, and the film certainly felt darker than anything that I'd seen previously. And at that point, all I'd really known, as had the world, was bank holiday viewings of Sean Connery and Roger Moore's Bond films. I hadn't at that point even seen The Living Daylights. So watching License to Kill in the cinema as, I don't even think I was 15. How old would I have been? 13, maybe? And this film certainly did change my view of what Bond could be. Now, Timothy Dalton for me has become one of my favourite Bond actors. In fact, he's probably, I would say, top 2. I really do have a lot of time for his 2 entries in the series. But when you say that to people, a lot of people overlook Timothy Dalton's Bond contribution. They kind of bulk it together with that of George Lazenby. But what Timothy Dalton did after the Roger Moore era was ground Bond. He brought it back down to earth. Even in The Living Daylights, a film that was pretty much written for Roger Moore, Dalton started to bring his own portrayal of the character in and didn't play it as Moore had with the more campy humour. He really did ground that film, and I think that The Living Daylights is all the better for it, despite the fact it has quite a confusing plot. License to Kill, on the other hand, doesn't have a confusing plot. It's a very simple story. Bond goes out for revenge after his close friend Felix Leiter and his new wife are murdered. Well, Felix isn't murdered, but they attempt to murder him, but he basically just about survives, along with a nice little note that is left on him, referencing the book Live and Let Die, saying he disagreed with something that ate him. Bond goes out for revenge and brings us a totally different take on what we expect from a Bond film. Gone is the mission. Bond resigns from MI6 and he just goes out to get revenge on the person that did this to Felix and Della. And this film is very much a product of the late 1980s. It does look a little Miami Vice. It does look a little bit less filtered than later entries in the series. But what we do get is a story that gives us a badass James Bond out for revenge. And Dalton's portrayal of Bond is probably one of my favourite portrayals of Bond in the series. Now, I don't think we'd have the Daniel Craig movies in the way that we do if Timothy Dalton hadn't almost paved the way for this portrayal to come. Because up until then, we'd had the iconic portrayal of Bond by Connery. We'd had Roger Moore's complete ownership and new take on the Bond. And then Timothy Dalton had to bring something new. So he took it back down to the more literary style of Bond, and boy did he actually do a really good job, a job that a lot of people don't give him credit for. I genuinely think that the Bond series wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for Timothy Dalton and his 2 movies. Now, of course, Timothy Dalton should have got a 3rd movie, and I believe there were plans for his 3rd movie when the legal troubles hit MGM, and I think there was also rumoured plans for a 4th movie as well. And I would have loved to have seen where Dalton's portrayal of Bond would have gone, given this sort of way that his character was heading. But unfortunately, as we know, we didn't get the 3rd film because of all the legal issues MGM were having. But we did get GoldenEye 6 years after License to Kill, and that brought in the Pierce Brosnan era. And originally they did ask Timothy Dalton to come back for GoldenEye, and it would have been interesting, I guess, to see how he would have tackled that story. But again, he decided 6-year gap was way too much, and he stepped away from the Bond films. But thinking back to 1989 and my first cinematic Bond experience, it did make me think just the other day that Timothy Dalton definitely doesn't get enough appreciation. And I genuinely think that his portrayal of Bond and his overall tenure, even though it was only 2 films, really does need to be appreciated a little bit more. And luckily, as time has gone on, the appreciation has started to build for those 2 movies. But let me know in the comments what you think of Timothy Dalton's portrayal. Do you prefer the more traditional Living Daylights, or do you prefer the more harder edge of License to Kill? If you do enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help to build this channel, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.